I'm Marty Sakata. I started this group many years ago. So I'm a Wharton guy. I worked in banking for many years. I work with like Goldman Sachs, UBS, Deutsche Bank, and JP Morgan, where I worked with them for many years, maybe 10 years. So, we're going through some fascinating times, but when I was working, there was a financial crisis. There was a company called Long-Term Capital Management, and I was working for a company called Swiss Bank. So UBS and Bankers Trust, if anybody remembers Bankers Trust, you get a gold star. They were at the bottom. They were lending money to both Long-Term Capital Management and to Russia at the same time. Russia had some problems with some debt it had. Long-Term Capital Management had to default. So UBS was going to go under. Bankers Trust did go under. They got acquired by Deutsche Bank, and UBS was forced to get acquired by Swiss Bank, where I was working. And so that was like the mouse eating the elephant, right? And so we had a lot of meetings in Basel on how that was going to happen. And then we came back to the United States. I started a group of Wharton guys investing directly in private equity. It morphed into this group. And so more than 20 years later, we've had 400 events, 200 dinner parties, and just a couple of weeks ago, we had about 500 people for an event with Tim Draper. So we typically average around 300 to 400 people per event. This is our first time back in LA. We've got around a little bit more than 300 people registered so far. So I'm sure they'll be coming on later on in the afternoon. We've got some fantastic speakers. So just to let you know, besides Michael Ashley Shulman, who's been in the family office space for many years, we have Ron Javari speaking. Ron's a great real estate guy. He's a fintech investor. But he was the head of, I'm going to say CDOs for BlackRock back in the day. And then he started New Oak Capital, which has just been a fantastic, successful real estate firm. And then after Ron, obviously we'll have Tyson Halsey speaking, Tom Niehaus. So Tom is a venture lender. And for those of you who have been here for our events, we just had a big discussion on venture lending in Austin the same week that Silicon Valley Bank was going under. And, everything's kind of on its head right now. So it's a really intriguing time in the venture lending space. And then we've got a whole bunch of other guys who are in alternative credit. And I think we're looking at like a golden age of alternative credit for the next 3 to 4 years, because that's what happened in 2008. And I think this might be bigger because I think the bubble's bigger, right? I think there was a bubble in real estate before, but now there's like an everything bubble. And Michael, hopefully we'll talk about that as well. Alan Snyder's going to be speaking. We've got Matt Nordgren speaking. So Matt has run a debt fund in the cannabis space and a private equity fund in the cannabis space as well for many years. He kind of like, cannabis royalty, is there such a thing? Without gold chains. Anyway, he's kind of cannabis royalty in Southern California. I think his fund was like a $500 million fund or larger at one point. Cannabis debt was fantastic for years. So gonna love to hear what he has to say. And then Fred Nazem. So Fred has taken 70 companies public, 40 have been unicorns. He's gonna be zooming in from New York, tell us what's going on in the space. And then we'll cover real estate, and everything in the news you read is CRE, and I think it's going to be really interesting what happens. I mean, occupancy rates, I think in New York, 50% occupancy rates in San Francisco are like at 30 to 40%. I don't know how Los Angeles is doing in occupancy, but I think we're going to find out, right? So let me see what else. I got some notes here. What's that?
LA is 78%.
LA is at 78%. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. People are going into the office. But I think LA is not as concentrated as New York and San Francisco. So maybe people go into the office in Westwood. Century City's fantastic, It'll
get worse.
Oh, these are interesting times. I gave a speech. I'm going to be coming back here to LA to give a speech at an event for the future of technology in June. But, I told everybody where people are at and how digital assets I'm looking at very negatively. And the Federal Reserve has kind of followed in on that by shutting down the largest digital asset bank in the country. So I'm kind of negative digital assets. Obviously there's a banking crisis. I I'm not super happy with venture capital right now. And actually, I was talking to a venture capitalist yesterday who's raising a fund, and I said, tell me a deal that you love. And they didn't have an answer. And so I'm like, if you're trying to raise money and you have a fund that's in venture capital or real estate or whatever, and you cannot answer that question, that's negative. Right? You just have to be laser focused on your space, on what you're doing, and why you love it, and why it's the best thing, because nobody else is going to be speaking about it that way besides you. So if you're not the biggest advocate for what you do, you're not going to find somebody else and say, hey, they got a good idea, right? Doesn't happen in the real world. So things I do like, and this is pretty much driven by 2008, are secondaries, distressed debt, distressed equity. And I know, Matt Kessler's out in front of me, and I had this exact same discussion with Matthew yesterday. So I like, unencumbered assets, distressed debt, distressed equity. And that's because in 2008 through 2011, let's say, you could find incredible deals in debt, especially in the hotel space. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in the hotels, but maybe you guys can. I think that's probably healthier than it was in 2008, right? Because in 2000, so in 2008, 2009, the deals that I came across the transom with me were like the top hotels in Miami, Fontainebleau, Eden Rock. They were all, there was a Lowe's, they were all like 50% off. You could buy them. And then like the SunTrust Tower, I'm going to say was at 80% per square foot off. Yep. It's fantastic deals, right? So I think in the office space, you're going to see some amazing deals. I'm not sure if you're going to see hotels in Miami going for cheap anymore. Oh yeah, and also there's a boomer retiree wave, which I think is going to be happening. So I think a lot of people in 2008, they were in trouble, and they're like, should I retire? Is it time to sell? Nobody wants to sell at the bottom. So a lot of boomers stuck it out. The Fed cut interest rates, and they say, great, we're good for 10 more years. And then they never quit. And now things are bad again. And now they got to get out again. So I think there's going to be a huge wave of boomer retirements. And I think a lot of boomers have assets that are fantastic. They ran a business, they bought all the real estate underneath the business, and probably there's some incredible real estate value to be unlocked from a lot of these boomers. Let me see. So I've got Michael. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic, great. So why don't you introduce yourself? I know you as an adventurer and as an economist and a chief investment officer of multiple multifamily offices. Last time I thought you were doing rock climbing somewhere maybe, and like Tom Cruise in one of those movies, or Sylvester Stallone, but cliffhanger. But why don't you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.